All right, guys, so we got to talk about this wow / heated debate that happened between Fox News anchor Martha MacCallum and BLM New York leader / activist Hawk Newsome that revolves around Hawk Newsome's comments threatening violence and bloodshed in the streets of New York City if New York City Mayor-elect Eric Adams reinstitutes the plainclothes police unit / the anti-crime unit back in New York City in response to the spike in crime and violence going on in New York City. Now, Eric Adams has responded to Hawk Newsome and his comments threatening violence and bloodshed by basically saying, listen, we're not going to let your threats get in the way of the safety of the New York City citizens, okay? Basically saying, look, we're not going to let you boss us around, and we're also not going to let you burn down our city. Now, again, Hawk Newsome went on Fox News to discuss this with Martha MacCallum, and basically it went off the rails. Take a look.
When you listen to the words of Eric Adams, and I know we covered the meeting that you had with him not that long ago, what goes through your mind? What's your response to him on that?
Well, the mayor is engaging in a political circus, and my parents didn't raise a clown. So I'm not here to play these circus-type political games with him. I'll say this. The mayor took a trip to Africa, which wasn't covered by the press. His appointees wasn't covered by the press. So he threw my name out there so he can get in the media. Look at what happened after we engaged in this back and forth. He was on Colbert. He was on Anderson Cooper. He was on Bill Maher. I made him famous, right, for this spat we had. And if the mayor truly cared about what's best for the city, he would have talked about the things we agreed upon in that meeting. But he didn't want to discuss that, Martha.
Well,
he just wants this hype and this attention.
He says he wants to bring this unit back. Listen to what he said. He said, I was elected, and this is what I ran on, and I'm going to follow through on that because that's what the people of New York City have asked me to do. Watch this.
I said I was going to reinstitute an anti-gun unit in plain clothes. Voters voted on that. They're going to have their body cameras on every interaction. We're going to use precision policing to identify the gang members. We removed the precinct-level plainclothes unit. That was a bad decision.
So since that unit was disbanded, we've seen homicides almost double in New York City. So he's saying, I want a safe city. And a lot of New Yorkers respond to that really positively. They want a safe city. They want to be able to go out in the streets. They don't want people breaking the windows and stealing stuff. They want to see children be safe on the streets. What is wrong with anything that he just said there?
Well, here's the problem. The man does not have a plan. He's about to be the
Yes, he does have a plan. He's going to put the anti-crime police unit back on the street.
Wait. Can you listen? Can you listen? Are you going to yell at me? Or are you going to let me make my point? You just talked.
Don't do that.
Right?
Okay, don't do that.
This again.
All right? Because I can interject and I can say, okay, you say he doesn't have a plan.
Let me make a statement.
Go ahead.
Okay.
I just let you go on about Africa and Anderson Cooper, who no one cares about.
The things that he's saying, the things that he's saying, precision policing, focusing on gangs, these are all things that de Blasio said. Crime isn't just up in New York City, it's up around the country. So what is he going to do that's different other than talk? He's had more time.
I'm telling you, he wants to put that unit back on the street. I spoke with a New York City detective. No, it's my turn now. I spoke with a New York City detective who said to me, back in June of 2020. Let's take turns here, okay? I let you answer. Let me ask you a new question, and then I'm going to let you respond, okay? I spoke with a New York City detective when that unit was disbanded. He said, you mark my words. There are going to be kids dying. This is going to be really bad. Let me put up on the screen. 21 children have been killed in the streets of New York, mostly in gang violence. The purpose of this unit that he wants to put back on the street, this is his plan, you asked what his plan was to clean up illegal guns, violence, and hard drugs on the street. So I'm asking you, what is wrong with putting this unit back on the street if it keeps children of New York City and adults safer?
Okay, there's this thing called the Constitution, and the Fourth Amendment protects us against illegal search and seizure.
Right.
Secondly, this unit has been responsible for the most high-profile deaths in the city. He isn't saying what he's going to do differently. For your journalistic integrity, just ask the right questions. What is his actual plan. He's just talking and drumming up news stories so that we can get this back and forth going again between two black men instead of talking about the things we agreed upon, which was feeding people good food, right? You want to talk about us being in these streets? We have a school where we teach kids how to be safe every single day. Today, I spent the day looking for a lost 11-year-old. I don't get paid by the city to do this. I'm not running for office.
God bless you for that. There's nothing. That is a good thing.
And you know what? Just one last thing, Martha. One last thing, okay? Nobody wants our communities to be violent. But there are other ways to do it. He's not saying what he's doing differently. Duh, the Democrats have been talking about body cams for the last 4 years. People are poor. You just reported that if inflation is up, people don't have money. People are starving.
People
their PPE
need to be safe, Hawk. They need to know that the police are going to have their back. They need to know that when they go out on the street.
People need jobs and opportunities.
Absolutely. Do what you can to keep the kids safe. And let the police officers go out and keep those same kids safe because they're dying at the hands of gangs who are doing...
See, you don't know what it's like. You don't know what it's like to be pulled over and thrown up against walls.
No, I don't.
You don't know what it's like to be riding in a
I
car with your friends as a college student.
And I'm sorry that happened to you. I really am. But the fact of the matter is...
You live from a place of white privilege where you don't really understand how they treat us in New York City.
You know what? I want this whole city, people of every background, faith, color, to be safer. And what I see on the street is that is not what is happening since this unit was disbanded. We have seen an increase.
But you see that all over the country. They didn't
I don't care about that. We're talking about New York. You care about New York. Your Black Lives Matter New York. I'm talking about New York City, one of the greatest cities in the country,
I just came
where
back
people
from
should
LA.
feel safe.
I do this in Houston. I do this in Atlanta. I help black people all over the country, like a Black Salvation Army.
That's great. Good for
in
you.
all of these communities. What are you doing? I found a lost kid today. What are you doing to help the greater good?
Do you know what I just said when you said that? I said, God bless you. And I would like that child to be able to grow up safely in this city. And we don't have the kind of support that we need because we have diminished these officers and we have put them in a situation where they can't protect that little 11-year-old that you just saved today. And like I said, good for you for the work that you're doing about poverty. But you have to have both sides.
They can't protect them. Even in cities where the police precincts weren't defunded, crime is up. How do you explain that? Crime is up across the country. Okay, you say they defund the police, and no, it is absolutely true.
Well, there's a number of factors with that, but when you look at the big increases in homicides across this country, what you're seeing is that the places where police have been diminished in their ability to do their job, which is nationwide, you're seeing an increase
People are getting robbed on Rodeo Drive.
No kidding.
People are getting robbed on Rodeo Drive.
Yeah, you ask what I'm doing. We're covering those stories every day,
People
sir.
are getting robbed
I got to leave it there
all over
because we're out of time. I appreciate the work that you're doing in poverty. I think we can have a safe city, and we can also take care of the poor.
Can I say one last thing?
Quick.
Free Larry Hoover.
Thank you very much for being here. Hawk Newsome.
All right, guys. So that was pretty crazy, right? That was very, very, very heated. And Martha MacCallum is probably one of my favorite Fox News anchors, okay? And one of the reasons why is because when she talks about issues and policies that she actually has a stake in, she gets pretty testy about it, okay? She gets pretty testy. And she got pretty testy doing this exchange with Hawk Newsome because she knows in the back of her head that, hey, you know, this guy's threatening violence and bloodshed on the streets, and we need this anti-crime police unit to be back because I don't want violence on the streets, right? I live on these streets, okay? So she has a direct stake in this conversation that's happening right now, right? So again, she's going to give a lot of pushback. She obviously agrees with Eric Adams and the policies that he's proposing in order to reduce crime. Now, Hawk Newsome, and his point, he's worried about the anti-crime unit coming back. And what he's actually really worried about is stop and frisk. But before we get into that, I want to say that we can't even really understand his point because a lot of people are going to tune out because he immediately pulls a race card, right? Where he's like, well, Eric Adams, he got famous off of me, right? As if the dude wasn't known before his little exchange between him and Eric Adams. And talking about how Eric Adams is trying to play up this beef between him and another black man. And then going on to accuse Martha MacCallum of having white privilege and not having the lived experience to understand what people like him go through and yada, 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 right? Just pulling a race card all over the place, right? I'm black, you're white, therefore you can't have an opinion on this subject. Again, even though Martha MacCallum here, she knows in the back of her head, she has a direct stake in these policies, right? But again, it's hard for people to pick up on this stuff because he is just pulling a race card like always in a situation that I think is just entirely unnecessary to tell this woman that she has white privilege, so therefore she doesn't know, okay, when she obviously has a stake in these policies. She lives in New York City. That's why it's obvious that she supports what Eric Adams is doing. Now, here's the thing, right, when it comes to the whole stop and frisk thing, okay? Eric Adams has come out and basically said, yeah, I support stop and frisk. However, I support it being done, a little bit differently than what it was done before, okay? Because the criticism of stop and frisk is that it is racist, okay? That it disproportionately affects so-called black and brown people because police officers, basically, pulling over people that they think are suspect or sketchy or whatever, in searching for illegal guns to identify them to see if they're suspects or wanted or committed crimes or whatever, right? Now, again, this is controversial. And the truth of the matter is when it comes to stop and frisk is that a lot of these Democrats actually support it. But they can't say they support it out loud because stop and frisk is seen as racist, right? But see, Eric Adams, who was an ex-cop, who's actually had experience, who ran on a tough on crime campaign to fix this problem in New York City, he's like, yeah, I support it, except, I want to make it so it's a little bit different than we did last time. Okay, so yeah, Hawk Newsome, that's really where a lot of his concern comes, right? It's the whole stop and frisk thing. Now, in regards to the question of whether or not stop and frisk actually works, well, it just depends on whether you're on the left or you're on the right, right? Depends on who you ask, okay? Depends on who you ask, because there's studies out there that show that, hey, it doesn't work. There's studies out there that says it does work. However, regardless of whether or not you believe it works, one thing that I think that most people can agree with is that New York City increasing their police presence does work, and defunding the police does not work. As there's a study here that was done by UPenn that studied the effects of local police surges on crime and arrests in New York City that found that research on the NYPD's program of Operation Impact found that extra police deployed to high crime areas in New York City was a major factor in the crime decline, a 12 to 15% reduction. The additional use of stop, question, and frisk made almost no difference. The stops only had a detectable amount of crime when stops were based on probable cause, and these kinds of stops were very rare. Now, other research by Weisbach and colleagues also showed that stop, question, and frisk practices had only small associations with crime reductions on the order 2%, and the study did not measure the effects of stops over and above increased officer deployment. Okay, so that's a study that basically it's a more leftist study, but not far left. Okay, that basically says, look, stop and frisk, really doesn't work, again, according to this study. But we do know that increased police presence does work, right? That's what this study says. So again, even the studies that are against stop and frisk still are pro-police, right? They're still pro-police presence, which obviously Eric Adams supports, trying to bring back the anti-crime unit, right? Now, the pro-stop and frisk argument is a little bit more nuanced, okay? As the argument is essentially that, well, some of these other studies, like the one I just mentioned where they said that stop and frisk may have reduced crime by like 2%. They're saying that, yeah, when you look at that, that's in the context of an era in New York City in which crime rates were much lower, 2011. However, this study from Northwest University argued that if we assume that stop and frisk reduced crime by 2% in 2011, the benefit in terms of crime averted per capita would have been 56% larger in 2000 and 220% larger in 1991 when crime rates were higher than in 2011. So basically, the argument here is that it basically depends, right? So stop and frisk may not be useful when crime rates are low. However, when crime rates are higher, right, like they were in the 90s, okay, then stop and frisk is useful. Okay, that's essentially what the argument is. Now, again, a lot of people have issues with stop and frisk because of the whole racial profiling thing, and you kind of see that from Hawk Newsome there. He's kind of bringing that up in regards to the Fourth Amendment and whether or not it's constitutional. Now, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just giving you the facts. Okay, the Supreme Court has already decided on this in the 1975 case of the United States versus Burgoni Ponce, and this basically involved illegal immigration, right, in which they decided that, quote, the likelihood that any given person of Mexican ancestry is an alien is high enough to make Mexican appearance a relevant factor for the U.S. Border Patrol and other law enforcement entities to stop vehicles and question the occupants regarding their immigration status. Writing for the court, Justice Lewis Powell said that, quote, a heavily loaded vehicle, an extra number of passengers, and or the characteristics appearance of persons who live in Mexico could in concert warrant such stops. Okay, so they're saying that basically the stereotypes, they're so true that it constitutes a reason to stop and search these individuals based off their appearance. I'm just saying that's kind of what it sounds like to me. And there was also a prior Supreme Court case of Terry versus Ohio in 1968, in which the Supreme Court decided that stop and frisk was in fact not unconstitutional and is not a violation of the Fourth Amendment as long as the officer has reasonable suspicion. They don't necessarily need probable cause, right? Reasonable suspicion to believe that the person has committed a crime, is committing a crime, or is about to commit a crime, right? Again, whether it's right or wrong, people can debate that in the comment section. I'm just saying it's decided by the Supreme Court. Now, again, a lot of people, again, have issues with this. But again, the argument for it is that, well, listen, most of the people committing crimes in the city, a disproportionate amount of them are black and brown. So therefore, in order to reduce crime, listen, they're searching people based off these characteristics, right? Again, people find it controversial. However, you can also say that it disproportionately benefits people who are black and brown, as they are the ones that are mainly the victims of these violent crimes. But I'm just saying, Eric Adams, who's black, he supports it. He's saying it works, right? So, listen, again, this argument about stop and frisk is very nuanced, it's very controversial. And he says he's going to bring it back, but, it's going to be different. I think they're probably going to do it based off probable cause, which probably will be more in line with what he was thinking rather than what they were doing before, which is just, hey, I see somebody that, may fit these stereotypes in my head, so I'm going to search you, right? But like I said, again, that's a nuanced conversation that, it's really hard to get into on TV, right? And that's one of the things I was thinking about when I was watching this and having my own experience being on TV. I guess you can count Black News Tonight being TV or whatever, right? When I talk about like how hard it is to really have those nuanced conversations and to really get into that, to talk about it. But again, it's hard to do that when you are arguing with somebody that literally is not really in reality. Like this guy, Hawk Newsome, who basically tried to say that the mayor didn't have a plan to stop crime when he actually did. He just didn't like the plan, right? Just because you don't like the plan doesn't mean that he doesn't have a plan. The plan is there. You just don't like it. So yeah, I can see why Martha MacCallum here got frustrated because this guy is basically saying things that are not true. And then he goes off of the rails playing a race card, accusing her white privilege, accusing Eric Adams of trying to play two black men against each other for clout. Again, all types of crazy stuff, right? That again makes it hard to really have a nuanced, educated conversation about the policy and the merits of the policy in and of itself, right? So again, I found that interview slash debate slash exchange slash confrontation to be very, very, very entertaining. But let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.